Tuesday. What's up, y'all? And by y'all, I mean a very, 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 very small.
We'll talk to ourselves.
We often talk to ourselves until people join, or unless people join, or sometimes people watch it later. So who knows? It could be that there are 300 people watching later. In which case, thank you for showing up. We really appreciate you.
We're still gonna talk.
It's gonna be a nonsense type chat tonight. We were one behind because we missed one 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, did we?
We were supposed to do one 2 weeks ago, and then we didn't do a live
stream.
stream.
Because we were coming back from traveling? I can't remember.
It was partially because we were coming back from traveling, and partially because work had just been insane, and we had like zero time to prepare.
And you were trying to edit some videos.
Get some slides together. There's a lot that goes into making a channel function, let me tell you what.
It wasn't a good week for it.
Which is actually a great segue for anyone who is watching this at any point now or later. We do want to say a very heartfelt. This is actually the second time I think we've made reference to it. We've been very like on the DL about it because we don't want to say it and then like have like 30 people jump ship and then it not be true anymore. But we did officially cross the 2,000 subscriber threshold. It was relatively recently. It was about I think a week or two ago.
Yeah.
We've climbed to a safe increment above 2,000 now, where I feel like I can say it out loud and not jinx it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. If you're new to the channel, if you're watching this as our first exposure to Tim and Katie and the brand that we have, I'm so very.
This would have been a great time for someone who wasn't us to tell us if it was working.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Oh, we're back.
Oh, we're back?
We're back. Okay. We got our testers up. We're seeing ourselves. We're moving. We're in motion. Okay. Well, sorry for whatever that was.
Well,
we do not know what
absolutely
happened.
No one is going to watch this, so we can say whatever we want now.
I just want to say that had absolutely nothing to do with us and everything to do with the platform that we use.
Yeah.
So at least I feel like it's completely out of our control, and I feel a little better about it. It's kind of like if it's an act of God, I don't feel bad about it. I'm just like, well,
yeah.
But if it's me, then I have a problem. So it works out. All right. Well, the stream is still going as far as we can tell. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with what we had to talk about tonight. I imagine that, as Katie said, like probably no one is going to watch this, but it's okay if you watch it later and it doesn't quite make any sense because it doesn't make sense for us either.
Yep.
So... Oh my God. So thank you for 2,000 subscribers. In summary, we'll go ahead and dive in. If anyone joins later, then someone joins later. If not, we'll talk to ourselves. We're good company.
We are.
So our socials are The Real Tim and Katie on Instagram and Threads. Facebook, we're just Tim and Katie, as with our YouTube channel. And the website, timandkatie.net, is behind again, as is a chronic failure on our part. But it will get there.
We'll get there.
We'll catch up eventually. We do have a little bit of theme park news to discuss tonight, but I feel like we've already lost a little bit of time on just technology issues. So I'm just going to real quick, jump through it. So first and foremost, we don't just cover the United States when it comes to theme park news. Hyperia overseas in the UK is now the tallest. I don't know if it's the fastest, but it is the tallest, largest, so on and so forth. Broke a bunch of records for the UK. This is based in Thorpe Park. It opened for a day. It was supposedly magnificent, and then it closed for a really long time while they tried to. I don't even know what happened, to be honest with you. The park was very coy about it. They said it was not a safety issue. It was some kind of unrelated maintenance issue. It finally did reopen a couple days ago, and there's a news story floating around where riders got stuck on the lift hill for an hour, but then it seemed to sort itself out. So as far as I know, Hyperia is operating as of now. It is actually like open to the public, and I think they are like mandating at this point still like you have like a time window to register for a ride. But we're excited. At some point, we're going to talk a lot about UK coasters on this live stream in particular too. So at some point, we hope to put together a UK trip, and it looks like this is going to be a must-do park.
Oh yeah, I think Thorpe Park was definitely on our.
Thorpe Park, Alton Towers, Chessington, a couple other really great parks in the UK. So
Blackpool Pleasure Beach.
Blackpool Pleasure Beach.
I don't know why I said it weirdly, but
also having opened recently is the DreamWorks Land at Universal Orlando. There's not a whole lot of great photos, weirdly, of this area since the opening, but there are tons of great videos. A lot of our friends that are Orlando-based have gone and experienced their pass holder previews. There's lots of great video content covering, like Shrek and Donkey have a new home. The Troller Coaster is open. The Kung Fu Panda Training Academy looks awesome. And they also did like a really, really good job with theming and splash pads and all that. So
I'd love to check it out and just walk through it and absorb the theming.
Yeah.
I think it was well done. And I think it was probably time for an update.
No
to
one
that
knows
area.
who Woody Woodpecker is anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah. And,
except at Portaventura World. He's still popular there.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, no one knows who Woody Woodpecker is.
But
so
I'm excited to one day, who knows when, check it out.
And I will say too, we could spend an hour on any one of these stories, but we're not going to. So we're just hitting them really, really close. But it's not that we're not excited about it. We just got a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Also at Universal, we have not one but two new nighttime spectaculars, also having been covered by several of our Central Florida friends. So we're not going to have to go into this in vivid detail because you can look up videos now. They're all out there. But this is Hogwarts Always, which has replaced the previous fireworks show at Hogwarts Castle in Islands of Adventure in Universal Orlando. We've only seen snippets, but it looks really, really good.
It looks
and we
nice.
Like each house. There's a different house that wins the cup every night, so it's never the same.
Apparently, it like takes you on the journey from like getting your Hogwarts letter to the end of the school year, and whichever house wins the house cup, and it's a different house every night. So, yeah. I think it sounds nice. I mean, it's a nice nighttime show to view, and lots of as long as you can get a spot to see the castle, you can pretty much experience the show. And
and I like that it's kind of like 4 different shows because a different house wins every night. So it's kind of like medieval times. Like you could go one night and then go another night and have a different experience up to a point. Up to a point. If you go every day, you're going to see all of them, and it's going to get stale. But at the same time, it's a fireworks show, not a medieval dining show. So it's never going to get as stale as some other things would.
But it seems, there's been positive reviews about how nice the projections look.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the technology's been updated.
Universal Creative has undisputedly been killing it recently.
Yeah.
Indisputably, not undisputedly. But speaking of Universal Creative, this is the second nighttime show.
This is the one I'm most excited for.
This is the big one. So, I don't know if you know this, but this is a limited time show.
No!
They did say it might not stay. I wager it will be extended by popular demand because it's been really, really popular.
I feel like they've been hyping it up so much. Why would it be limited?
Well, they were hyping up the fact that the show, the Lagoon, is going to have a show again because it hasn't had a show really since 2020.
If they have to, if they're going to do another like Halloween Horror Night show, like maybe it's
and then
not
they might like bring it back. It's probably going to be like Happily Ever After, where they bring it back with changes every couple of months.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Cinesational, which is the name might be my only gripe about the show because I feel like it could be sensational and roll off the tongue a little better, but it's Cinesational.
I think, because it's supposed to be cinema.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense,
Yeah.
but you could still spell it C-I-N. Anyway, it's apparently an amazing show. We've only seen little snippets of it so far, but we have been really, really impressed. And that's like in video form, so like we can't even imagine what it's like standing there. I'm sure you get a little bit of mist and like interactions and like the vibrations of the sound and all that. Like it's got to be cool. But this is basically like a musical soundscape with water projections, drones, fireworks. Like it's the whole 9 yards. And Universal did like a some fire. Universal had to shut down their lagoon shows after Halloween Horror Nights last year when a freak storm damaged them. So we haven't had a show at Universal in the lagoon since what, October, September of last year?
I think it was pretty early in Halloween Horror Nights.
It's got to have been like 8 months. Yeah. So it's really cool to see this area with something to look forward to, especially after dark, because I know Universal Studios has typically been thought of as like the less busy park, the less attractive. It's a movie set, basically. It's themed to a movie set.
It's like, so I'd say it's, although it has quite a few throw rides.
It's not a boring park, but it's
less thrilling park, but I wouldn't necessarily say that.
Well, no, I wouldn't either, but you and I are theme park people. With the DreamWorks Land opening, with Cinestational, with much as I personally do not care for the Minions, but they did open a Minions Land with the Minions Cafe and the Despicable Me like shooting gallery. And we got more stuff still to come. Like this park is really picking it up a notch.
Yeah, it's nice to see them investing in this park instead of what felt like for many years kind of taking away from it.
Also, I don't know if you saw, but they added a DeLorean and some photo ops to the New York area today. Nice. Like today. It was a surprise announcement.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, this isn't happening, I don't think, sooner than soon, but it's happening sometime this summer. We'll have a new parade in this park as well.
Yeah.
So between this, that, and all the other things, I think Universal Studios is going to be
a poppin' place.
It's going to be a place to be. Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We're going to talk a lot tonight about reimagined attractions, which is the point of the live stream. Tiana's Bayou Adventure is probably the most notable recent example of a reimagined attraction. Disney is notorious, or perhaps famous, for retheming attractions or reimagining attractions. And this, of course, was the original Splash Mountain attraction, which has now been reimagined on both coasts. Tiana's Bayou Adventure is nearing the end of its preview stage and will officially open to the public later this month. It looks really, really cool at night. I've deliberately been avoiding spoilers of like the inside, despite like Disney parks doing their absolute best to spoil it for everyone on their social media. We did manage to duck most of those spoilers. So we've only seen the exterior, but it does look really, really cool. So TBD on the actual ride experience, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it looks really cool.
It's still got the big drop.
It's still got the big drop. And the animatronics look baller too. Now, as we get towards the tail end of our theme park news, we are dipping a toe into Halloween Horror Nights. Universal Orlando went bananas with original houses this year. We had, I believe, 6 original houses and 1 IP house. We usually, at Universal Orlando, at least have 10 houses and several scare zones, and sometimes an icon. And those are the big announcements for Halloween Horror Nights. So looking at this, bear in mind, it's not even July yet. And we were expecting that by July, we would have like 3 or 4 houses announced. Well, we have like almost all of them announced now for Universal Orlando. So yeah, going through them in order, we have Triplets of Terror, Goblin's Feast, Slaughter Cinema 2, which is a sequel house, Monstruos, the Monsters of Latin America, the Museum Deadly Exhibits, and Major Sweets Candy Factory, which is a continuation of a scare zone that they came up with for, I don't think last year, I think it was the year before. 2 years
I think we walked through.
We did go through the Candy Town, yep. So, and then of course, The Quiet Place is their first IP house, which is actually been announced for both coasts. And speaking of both coasts, we have 2 houses announced for Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood. Anyone going to the California park will be experiencing A Quiet Place. Typically, the IPs are coming to both coasts because Universal pays a lot for licensing and they make the most of it throughout all their properties. But then the original houses are all different. So we got our first original house announced as well, Dead Exposure Death Valley, which I have discovered through diligent internet homework that was actually something that was done in Orlando.
Oh.
Not Death Valley, but like Dead Exposure was a house with a different subtitle in Orlando at one point looking back. And it has come now to California in a new form. So talking of reimaginings.
There we go.
Ta-da!
Hey, those props and everything that goes into their builds that are temporary have got to be so expensive.
Yeah.
So I'm totally fine with
them repurposing some of them,
digging them back out.
I imagine that there will be some shipments between the two coasts to get this one up to snuff. But I will also say that one house on one coast, even if they happen at the same time, like A Quiet Place is going to happen simultaneously. That's not to say that they're going to be identical. They're going to be very different from one another. as was evidenced by the Chucky Ultimate Kill Count house, which was apparently not so great in Universal Orlando and actually really good in the Hollywood.
Better received in Hollywood. Yeah.
Who knows? I don't think they're different audiences because the same people will travel back and forth between both coasts. So I think that it basically just comes down to the space they have and how they use it.
Yep, I think that's it. No notes.
So that's our theme park news. We got through it in I'm lopping off like 3 to 4 minutes for the beginning for the flub. The flub.
Whatever that was.
I'm sorry,
just
people.
Kicked us out.
I don't know, man.
That was
I don't
so
know.
weird.
It was not an internet issue on our side. We had perfect Wi-Fi connection. I do not know what happened. We'll be writing a strongly lettered word. Or sorry, strongly worded letter.
Oh, I thought you did that on purpose.
Strongly? No, I flubbed that. That one was me. Anyway.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So, tonight we're going to be talking primarily about reimagined attractions. And what prompted this is the fact that we've been doing a fair amount of traveling over the last probably couple of months. Start of our year was very slow. We're picking up now. And we have a lot more trips planned. We're going to be experiencing and already have experienced a number of reimagined attractions this year. What kind of got it in our mind was the Loch Ness Monster attraction at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which is on the list and we will talk about it, so I won't spoil too much. But the idea is you take an attraction that has, for whatever reason, started to lose its vigor. Is no longer what it used to be, is no longer drawing the same crowd, is no longer functioning as intended. There's a variety of reasons, which we'll go over too. And you reimagine it, reshape it, rebuild it using most of the original parts to give the experience a fresh new take. So we had to think kind of logically and pretty hard about how to qualify these reimaginings because there's a lot of attractions that are based on previous attractions or show reverence or homage to original attractions, but are not in and of themselves the same attraction.
They would be just a new attraction.
Yeah, like thinking locally for Busch Gardens Williamsburg, you have the Dark Coaster, which is definitely an homage to Curse of Dark Castle, the dark ride.
It's a sequel attraction.
Yeah, and that's really, really cool. And don't get me wrong, we love when parks do that. We love that Halloween Horror Nights pays homage to past attractions and Halloween houses. Like, it's cool that theming is consistent and that narratives continue. But for an attraction to truly be reimagined, it has to have some of the bare bones original parts.
Yeah, so you can't take a dark ride, turn it into a different
roller coaster,
and then be like it's a reimagined attraction.
Yeah. So
we kind of made up rules for our discussion.
But I think the industry would agree. I think
but
these
if
are
you
fair
disagree,
rules.
let us know.
Yes.
We're not experts and we're not, we're not saying we're always right.
Yeah. So what makes for a proper reimagining, in our opinion and our opinion only? The bones are the same. So whatever was built there, we have some of the same structure existing that carries over to the new attraction. The classification has not changed, meaning you can't go from a dark ride to a roller coaster and call it a reimagining. It's a new attraction along the same lines narratively, but it's not a reimagined attraction.
You take a walkthrough and make it a ride. It's not a reimagining.
Which is why you won't, if you're on the off chance that some of our Dutch fans watch this and make it this far, we're not talking about Danse Macabre tonight as a replacement for
Spook
Slop, because that attraction has changed dramatically from what it was, even though it's obviously kind of a sequel attraction.
Yeah, sequel, cousin, whatever.
Reverence for the original version. Now, this is something that a lot of sequel attractions do really, really well. but a true reimagining will have the previous two things and then reference or homage to the original attraction. So like Splash Mountain's a perfect example because even though the overall theme has changed, the ride type has remained the same. There is definitely reference for what was there. There's a lot of Easter eggs tucked in there, as we've been hearing.
Yeah.
And so far, most of the bones are the same, minus the $1 Million Bunny. Permanent changes to the attraction. The only reason we included this as a stipulation is because we talked about, well, a ride overlay is kind of a reimagining, but it's really not because it lasts for however long and then it changes back to whatever it was.
So we're not talking about Haunted Mansion Holiday.
Or Star Wars themed Space Mountain. Right. Although that has stuck forever and a half.
Some would argue Hyperspace Mountain is the reimagining, but...
Tough to say.
Yeah.
It's tough to make a final decision on that one. Now, getting into the reasons for proper reimagining, there's 4 or 5 big ones that we want to touch on, but there's a variety of reasons.
We may have missed some.
We definitely missed some.
Yeah.
The cost of operation is key. When rides are built, they're built with the best available technology, usually. But that technology will become much more expensive to maintain as technology advances. So things that cost very little to operate at their inception may wind up costing a heck of a lot to operate as parts go out of like manufacturing, as the way that we build rides changes. And then you have basic stuff like going from like an incandescent bulb to LED bulb. Like some rides were built with incandescent bulbs throughout, and sure, it's an easy thing to fix that, but there's a lot of other examples where it's not so easy. So cost is a huge factor. Structural failures or degradation is another one that kind of plays along the same lines. Like if the ride has been operating for so long that it needs a complete retrack, coaster as being the key example there, sometimes the manufacturer or the park will decide, well, if we're going to have to gut the whole thing anyway, let's make it better. Let's make it more appealing to a newer crowd.
The RNC.
Open it up to a new audience, so on and so forth. So a lot of people use structural failures as an excuse to retheme or reimagine. Cultural relevancy. This is a sticking point for a lot of people. I know Splash Mountain has been a controversial loss, with Tiana's Bayou Adventure taking its place at the heart of the Black Lives Matter movement. But I do think that there are instances, and this may well be one of them, where that change is justified. And there's a lot of rides and attractions that are a little or a lot more aggressively, what's the word? Not politically correct.
Yeah.
Or
just past their time, I guess. Or...
Past their time is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Past their time is probably the best way of putting it. Like something that at the time felt okay or maybe even funny is not so much now that we're a little more aware of our surroundings. So cultural relevancy is key for a lot of these attractions. A good example also would be like Old Mill. It's not just like a cultural touch point that like things have to change because this is offending someone. It also comes down to, does anyone know who Woody Woodpecker is or Garfield the cat? Does anyone care what's happening? Maybe recently with the Garfield movie that nobody saw.
Trying to revitalize it.
But the Garfield attraction that they had in Kennywood has been rethemed to something that is very generic, and I actually like it better. Like I think that was a good decision.
Actually went back to was Old Mill themed. And
it was Old Mill, and then it went to Garfield, and then it went back to Old Mill because everyone was like, Garfield doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
So cultural relevancy. Sponsorship changes. Big one that I can think of off the top of my head, although they are not responsible for the most recent reimagining, would be Test Track.
Yeah.
Because they went from General Electric Motors to Chevrolet, and that's where we got Test Track 2.0. And we're going to talk about Test Track, don't you worry, but I do have to say, like, I love Test Track 2.0. I know everyone hated it but me. I loved it. I'm devastated to see it go. The sponsorship has not changed, so I'm cautiously optimistic that what Disney is doing is blending the two worlds to give everyone a little bit of what they want, instead of one very niche group like me exactly what they want. So we'll see what happens. But sponsorship changes can result in more drastic overhauls, especially for big parks like Disney that have sponsorship. Europa Park and Blackpool Pleasure Beach are also standouts across the pond that have sponsors throughout. And Blue Fire, I think, recently got a sponsorship change. So its queue has been completely reworked. I think it's better.
Controversial.
Lastly, technological advancements. We touched on this a little bit with structural failings and operating costs, but sometimes the technology that's newer is just better. And sometimes they look at a ride and they're like, dude, this is awful. We could do so much better now. Let's just scrap it and start over.
I think that's also ties into like Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Splash Mountain, where like the animatronics were probably, it was just not worth fixing some of them.
Yeah.
And that
the $1 Million Bunny is nicknamed
away...
the $1 Million Bunny because it cost over $1 million to keep that one prop in operation.
Yeah.
It was famously unreliable.
Yeah. So sometimes it is broke and you got to fix it.
Yep. That's the way of the world. So, our top reimagined attractions. No particular order. And I will say some of these we have ridden or experienced. Some of these we've not. Some of these are bucket list attractions.
We definitely forgot about some prominent ones.
Oh yeah, we were sitting down talking and we were like, so this is not a comprehensive list by any way, shape, or form. Like it's an absolute
by
disaster.
Our top, it was the ones we thought of when we had to think of them.
I would argue that the ones that jump to mind are usually the ones you're like, this is a top attraction. But there are lots of other examples which we can touch on as we go if we think of them that are not included in this list that probably should have been.
If we missed one that you really like, feel free to leave in the comments.
Yep. First and foremost, top of mind, and I'll get us off there for half a second so you can see what makes this
messy.
How do I do this? There we go. I forgot how to do live stream.
There we go.
So Loch Ness Monster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg is now the Loch Ness Monster : Legend Lives On. We do have a POV if you're interested in seeing it. It doesn't show every new theming element, but we did our best to showcase it a little bit.
The theming is best experience in person.
The theming is incredible.
Excellent.
They did a really, really good job. So this is a very old aero looping coaster. It was one of the first, and it is, I think to this day, historic as being the only interlocking loop coaster by this manufacturer. So it is unique, and it is an ace landmark for those who follow the American coaster enthusiasts. It is a very unique historic credit that is cool to experience with or without theming. But when they reopened it, despite the fact that we feel it's kind of a rough ride, it is worth doing at least once because the theming is immaculate. They did such a great job. What they've done is effectively, you can see in the bottom left corner, they've added an actual Loch Ness Monster that attacks the train on your way back to the station, similar to how the Velocicoaster has these like interactive audio props. I wouldn't call them animatronics because they don't move, but they are props.
I'm pretty sure it makes a noise.
Yeah, it does. They are sound triggered, and so is the Loch Ness Monster. So he roars at you as you're going through.
This is one theming element that if you're standing at the bottom at the coaster bay or whatever, you can get a nice look at it.
Yeah. And the ride is experienceable through multiple different viewpoints. Like you could be at the bottom, you could be on the ride, you could be in the station. Like you can see a whole lot of work and love and care went into the retheme because there's theming everywhere. It's not just like one element. They have like sound loops on the lift hill, 2 lift hills, 2 different sound loops. They have sound throughout. They have where they used to be like a giant empty dark spot where you go through a cave. Now there's like actual theming inside that cave. Projections, screens. There was actually, as I was editing the POV, I saw something that I didn't see before. There is actually a Loch Ness Monster like statue or whatever that curves around the inside.
I didn't see that.
So he's supposed to be like curving around and then popping out at you through the screen. But it's hard to see everything on your first ride. We've only done one ride, so we'll have to go back and experience it another time if we're gonna. It's a little bit rough. It's an older coaster and they have not replaced the trains.
Yeah. Well,
but it's a little rough.
Overall, like our takeaway was we were excited that the park decided to give attention to a well-loved but definitely was not as popular ride. And it definitely got, I think, a little bit more popular after the retheming. So good for them.
It definitely has a queue now. Yep. Now, it had a place for you to stand in a queue, but it didn't have a long wait previously. Yeah. Usually you could walk on and off Loch Ness Monster in a couple of minutes. But this one is now, we waited about 30 minutes to get to the platform and then another 20 for front row. So
really, we waited that long?
We did.
Like we waited that long.
I timed it. I promise you that's how long we waited.
I was having fun.
So I will also call out Busch Gardens Williamsburg as being like a true theme park. Like a lot of thought and TLC has gone into their rides, especially over the past decade. It was always a pretty good theme park from the point it was acquired and built out, but it has become like a tent pole for theme. I don't think we have anything like this in the Northeast. I really don't. Some would not consider Virginia the Northeast, but I would consider it our region as being the Northeast. This is definitely the best theme park in the North.
Technically, it's not the Northeast.
It depends.
You can call it the
whether
middle.
You ask me or someone else.
Well, technically, Maryland's not in the North either, so.
I'm northbound from Florida. All right, Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I feel like we've harped on this several times over even this live stream, but also like several live streams prior. So we could talk about this all day, and there's no need to because we've covered it so much. But I will say this is an attraction that, based on what we've seen, and again, we've been limiting ourselves to news stories and to, you know, little clips. Not like we haven't seen a whole POV, even though Disney released one. This is a true reimagining. This is something where they took the bones. The ride experience itself is supposedly the same, but they took the bones of Splash Mountain and they replaced all the animatronics with newer technology that looks brilliant. They've given like a whole new life to certain sets and certain scenes. It's a completely different narrative, though it follows the same linear path of the original ride. It really does look like it's going to be really cool. This is a flume ride. For those who don't know me, I'm not in love with wet attractions, but I did like Splash Mountain, and I'm sure I'm going to like this too. So we're really anticipating a good time on Tiana's Bayou Adventure. This is one of our top reimagined attractions that we've yet to do.
Yep.
We've been arguing on this, but I think that Frozen Ever After definitely counts as a reimagined attraction.
So it rests on the bones of Maelstrom, which is a boat ride in the dark in the Norway Pavilion.
I have the fast facts if you want them.
That followed, there were trolls, and it was kind of like more of a specifically Norwegian, fantasy exploration.
Maelstrom originally opened. So Epcot used to be the educational park, right? In a lot of ways it still is, but it's definitely more IP heavy than it used to be. Yeah. When Epcot opened the World Showcase, Maelstrom came with the Norway Pavilion. It opened in 1988. For a long time, like a much longer time than I thought, as someone who's only recently gotten himself into the Disney craze. It was operating until 2014. It wasn't until 2014 that Frozen Ever After was announced and Maelstrom had its last hurrah. After that, 4 years went by. Frozen Ever After opened in June 2018. So by the time we started hearing about or thinking about going to Disney World for the first time since we were kids, this was already like this. It had lost some of its shine.
I rode Maelstrom in like 2010, and as far as I know, that's the only time I've ever ridden it. Or 2009, I can't remember. That was like the only time I ever rode it.
So it is a flume ride, much like Tiana's Bayou Adventure. It does have a reverse section that sends you backwards through the used to be the troll forest, and now it's like the rock work where Marshmallow.
I don't know. I do think it is reimagined because it's not like they demolished the ride and built a new structure, dark ride for Frozen.
I think if Tiana's counts, this definitely counts.
Yeah. But I will say, this one's a lot more disappointing after seeing the new Frozen ride in Tokyo.
Well, think of it this way. This is the hang up of reimagined attractions. You have the space you have.
Also,
for the most part,
I don't like the projected eyes animatronics. I'm glad we moved away from that.
There's several versions of this particular attraction all around the world. The one in Tokyo. Is it Tokyo? Or no, it's
Fantasy Springs?
No,
or is it Hong Kong?
It's Hong Kong. Hong Kong's Frozen, which opened in between Fantasy Springs and this attraction. they do not have the projected eyes. That was a fad that Disney, I think, was really happy with, just functionally and cost-wise. But it's had a couple of bugs that really ruin the ride experience.
It doesn't do it for me.
I think it's less about what does it for you and more about the fact that like sometimes you'll get the empty eye projections.
Projected eye, like eyes on the Olaf or on the Sven, but it's the whole faces that really don't do it for me.
I think the problem with that piece of technology is that when it operates in V mode, you either have no face or you have like a question mark, like projection fail on their face.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like it really does take you out of the immersion.
I didn't intend to get hung up on this during this, but I just started thinking about it and I was like, yeah, this one isn't as good compared to the other.
Well, what we were after before we got stuck on the eyes is that there is a second version of this attraction, which is more or less a copy and paste in, I believe, Hong Kong, because they just opened their Frozen, and it's identical. Like it's exactly identical, same footprint, same everything, except that they changed the animatronics. The animatronics themselves, a little more fluid using the newer technology, and also do not have the projected faces. They are actual like blinking touch them faces. So touch them. So there's that version. And then going over to Tokyo Disney Sea's version, they just went above and beyond. Like the whole ride, it should be mentioned that Tokyo has a completely different pricing structure and a completely different audience. So they do things differently over there. It's not that they probably didn't pitch, hey, let's just copy and paste it. I think that the Oriental company that owns
they also just like to be unique.
Yeah, the Disney parks. I think they just looked at the plans and they were like, we can do better. And I'm like,
good for you.
Good for you. Let's do that in America too.
Anyway. I will harbor this ride. It's got the same bones as Maelstrom. It's the same ride, kind of.
It's a good ride.
It still has the backward section, and it definitely pays homage to Maelstrom. You have. I'm sure there's probably even more than I'm aware of.
There's hidden trolls.
But it obviously, the trolls are a part of the Frozen story, and particularly the little rock trolls, which I believe are a Norwegian.
There's a part of me that wonders if, like, when Frozen was pitched in like a board meeting, not the ride, but like the original movie, someone was like, "Ooh, we have nothing going on in the Norway pavilion."
I don't know. I mean, to some degree, I guess they're always thinking about what they can do for parks.
I would be. If I'm a parks man, I would be thinking like,
so there was nothing going on.
I know, but that's what they said in the board meeting.
Next.
That's what they said. I can't change it.
Next.
Speaking of board meeting disagreements. All right, so this is concept art for Test Track 3.0. The original Test Track opened in 1999. Again, it was under General Motors. I said General Electric earlier. It was General Motors.
I was like, is that right?
I said GE Motors, and it turns out I added the E. So it's General Motors was the original sponsor. When it opened, it was crash test dummy. Some of you may remember. A lot of you apparently do. I remember it too. I went on it as a kid.
I definitely did.
I'm sorry, it was boring. It was fun for what it was at the time, but like visually and immersion wise, it was boring. Like I don't
agree that it was boring.
It didn't stick out in my mind. It
wasn't future neon stuff.
Well, Chevrolet, when they took over sponsorship in 2012, at which time this was reimagined for the first time and we got Test Track 2.0. So a lot of people now that we have Tron and everyone knows what that's supposed to look like, a lot of people refer to Test Track 2.0 as Tron Track because it is very futuristic.
Even though it came, well, technically
I said now. That's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. When Tron opened and everyone was like, this reminds me of Test Track, then they're like, no, Test Track reminds you of Tron. And then they're like, it's just Tron Track. Anyway, I really like 2.0. It is more futuristic. It definitely is it's a more niche audience. And for Epcot, in the area that it was in, it made a whole lot of sense for it to be futuristic, but it didn't vibe well with Epcot nostalgia. People who remembered the original attraction and saw like the educational component of it, the World of Motion version, it didn't fit in their opinion. And I see an argument for that, and I see what Disney's trying to do. They did announce that this retheme would be a blend between the two. I'm cautiously optimistic because the sponsorship has not changed, that we will get a little bit.
You just don't want to lose the music.
I really love the music. Like, I really don't want to lose the music, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Honestly,
I just like to go fast.
You keep the music and you keep a little bit of neon here and there, like you're seeing in the sign. I think it'll be great, but I don't know that that's what they're gonna do. So
go fast.
Go fast.
That's all I care about.
We get it. We got you.
I want to go fast. if we don't go fast, then it's not good.
The second reimagining of this attraction was announced at D23 in 2023. It took well over 6 months for it to finally close. It officially closed, I believe, yesterday.
Yeah.
And the reimagining is currently underway.
My only gripe with this is long before they said we're going to do Test Track 3.0, they said they were going to reimagine and update. Say it with me. Spaceship Earth. Spaceship Earth is so due for a overhaul, and Test Track can be a little bit janky at times. I can understand.
It has a lot of. I mean, this is another one where it's like technological issues.
Maybe it needs a tune-up, but I don't think it needed a tune-up as much as poor little Egyptian papyrus guy.
Spaceship Earth is still running on like hopes and dreams. Like,
yeah,
it's everything is like gas powered and
hydraulics.
We've all gotten
and you're stuck on it. We've all experienced the person yelling at you that your spaceship is rotating backwards 1,000 times. Like, it's so due for an update. So that's my only gripe, is like they seem to have just totally abandoned that as a concept for Epcot. They're leaving Spaceship Earth as it is, and now it's already done. It seemed like they announced that and then got this done so much faster than anything they've ever decided to revamp before.
We do not have time to go down this rabbit hole, but I'll tell you what my gripe is about both Tiana's and Test Track and any other Disney reimagining that we might be looking at in the next year or two. I used to be able to get in a standard queue for both of these attractions. And suddenly we're going to have virtual queues and paid Fast Pass, and those are your only two options.
If Guardians of the Galaxy still has a virtual queue and they let Tiana's go to a standard queue, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to be really mad.
You're going to write your congressman? What are you going to do about it?
I will write a strongly lettered word.
Strongly lettered word. One word in particular.
The word will be
all right.
Fish.
Looking at a similar to Disney, but not
speaking
quite.
Of fish.
Yes, actually, not a bad transition that you accidentally did. So, in the theme park world, in the United States, there are two major players. There's a couple of minor players, and I would argue that SeaWorld and Busch are really entering the major player range. But at the moment, we have two. We have Disney, we have Universal. Universal has taken the lead, in my opinion, on the last couple of years and the last couple of projects. They've really started to show a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Gusto? That's not quite it.
Motivation?
Talent? The reimaginings that Universal has done, Universal Creative has been behind, have been truly great. And this applies to the Hollywood Park, which we're about to talk about, and to the Orlando Park, which has just done all manner of cool things with the fireworks shows in the DreamWorks Land. Technically, DreamWorks Land is a reimagining too. We didn't really think about that.
Yeah, I mean, Roller Coaster is a reimagined coaster since it didn't.
And the footprint of the whole land is the same. It's just
I don't know.
We changed a lot of attractions, so the bones are there, but the ride type has changed.
But is there still a giant hat you can play in?
No, now it's a giant slide that farts. Anyway, over in Hollywood,
that's the meeting I wanted to be in, guys.
What if we make it fart?
What if we make the slide fart?
Over in Hollywood, we have Jurassic World: The Ride, which is a reimagining of Jurassic Park: The Ride.
River Adventure.
Not to be. No, it was not. It was not. I did the homework. It was originally called Jurassic Park: The Ride. Opened in 1996 after the success of Jurassic Park the movie, the trilogy. I think we were in the. I think the second one had come out by the time they did the ride. But anyway, Hollywood, if you're not familiar, the Hollywood version of Universal Studios has a much smaller footprint. They have only as much space as they have, and they really can't afford to expand much because they're dead center in the middle of Hollywood. Like there are actual production sets functioning all around them. That's part of what makes the theme park cool. So inside this theme park, we have Jurassic Park the ride with a very small footprint. And if someone was thinking, how do we improve upon this? How do we make this cool? How do we reinvigorate it? It's not that Jurassic Park as an IP has lost any momentum over the years, but Jurassic World did reinvent and, if you will, reimagine an entire intellectual property for a new audience. And it worked. Like, it worked really well. Jurassic World, honestly, I thought it was great. So I'm speaking from the heart here. I think Jurassic World, in many ways, outshined the sequels to Jurassic Park. It probably doesn't outshine the original, but it does. It reinvigorated the entire franchise.
Even hardcore fans would probably say it's not hard to outshine The Lost World.
I liked Lost World. It was the third one that struggled.
Is it the Lost? Is that not the third one?
No, The Lost World is the second one.
Oh, my bad.
If Jeff Goldblum's in it, it's fine.
That's probably a good film.
So, Jurassic World the ride, basically what they did was they added a lot more water. Great for me. They added the Mosasaurus, which is a largely screen-based, that's what you're seeing here. It's a largely screen-based addendum to the Jurassic Park experience, or the Jurassic World experience, as the case may be. But it works really well. The way they did it, it's not entirely screen. It's screen that shoots water at you. It's screen that interacts with you. It's screen that follows you through that first section of the ride where there used to be not as much immersion. And then when you're going up the lift hill, you have Chris Pratt and I can't remember her name.
Claire.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Claire.
I was doing the actress's name. Yes, I know that it's Owen.
Oh, you didn't say Owen? Sorry.
No.
In my head, I thought you said Owen.
This is a live stream for the books.
Yep. You're doing great.
We're going up the lift hill. We have those two characters popping in and out and relaying a new narrative. And we have the Indominus Rex pen that was built up, and you know, they built the breakout. It is more fun. And the end scene, which, by the way, does not in any way, shape, or form compare to Jurassic World the ride at the Universal Studios Beijing Park in China. It just looks so cool. But the end scene that they added to this attraction, there are two, not one, two full-scale
gigantic
Tyrannosaurus Rex and Indominus Rex. They fight over your head as you do that final drop. It is so worth doing this attraction, whether you are a water lover or not, just for that. Like, it is one of the coolest things I think my eyes have ever seen.
Super impressive animatronic.
If they're working. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes the Indominus goes to sleep.
V-mode is not as cool.
But it is really, we were lucky when we went. We only had one day at Universal Hollywood and we made it count. But this was a really, really cool reimagining. And this is an example, I think, of what big minds and technological advances can do with a reimagining if they're properly motivated. Coming closer to home now. So we could talk really about any of the Rocky Mountain construction hybridization that has gone on at many different roller coasters in many different parks. We chose to focus on Wildcats Revenge because
we've done it.
We think it's one of the best. Iron Gwazi is probably the best for me, but Wildcats is close to my heart because we were there for the original.
I don't think I ever rode Gwazi.
No, I didn't go to Tampa until Iron Gwazi had already opened.
I had been to Tampa before, but I was like 8 and I was not doing coasters. I was in Dragonland.
Don't mind me.
Being safe.
I dropped the push pin apparently.
Oh.
Or screw.
The screw.
Turn of the screw. So Wildcats Revenge is an RMC hybrid coaster. And what that means for those outside the industry would be a wooden coaster. The original bones, which would have been the Wildcat back in the day, have been reshaped, remodded, built up using steel components to hybridize the coaster. And it is a completely different and wild experience that pays direct homage to the original ride. Now, the reason that I think this is a reimagining and Dark Coaster is not is because it still uses the original parts. It's still a roller coaster.
It's still a roller coaster. RMC is doing the RMC, I think, is its
RMC's
own
doing
kind of
God's work.
class of reimagining rides. I do like it when they kind of make it a sequel ride, like Iron Gwazi versus just, Gwazi. This is Wildcat's Revenge.
And Wildcat, the original GCI wooden coaster that was opened in 1991 here at the park, it was really starting to show its age.
It was bad.
This is an incredibly improved experience. And I don't think anyone who rode it would get off and be like, nah, Wildcat was better.
From the worst roller coaster in the park to the best.
In a hurry.
Heavily. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree that this was worth their investment.
I would categorize this as primarily a technology advancement because once hybrids took off, this is far from the only RMC hybrid. In fact, we're going to talk about another one next. Once the hybrids took off in theme parks and amusement parks around the country and around the world, it became really, really easy for Hershey Park to look at this and do the math on like, okay, if we keep the bones, how much does it cost to give riders a brand new experience at what is honestly not that high a price tag? So relative to building a new ride from scratch, sorry, it's not like it was free. It cost them a lot of money, but it's
an investment.
It was an investment that I think paid off in dividends like immediately because like pass holder previews were nuts. Media day was nuts. Every day since it opened has been nuts.
It's still getting like people who, live across the country come and try Hershey Park and they're like, this is a great ride.
And as much as I resent that I used to have short lines at Laugh Track, it does draw more of the crowd towards the back of the park at the very beginning of the day, which balances crowds over the whole park. If you think about it from like a how do we keep people here spending money perspective, like for the park and the park's economy, it's great. It's a huge, huge difference to draw everyone back to the back of the park at the beginning of the day because then they spend the rest of the day working their way forward. They eat in the park. They shop in the park. Like this has been a monumental advancement for Hershey.
Something that I've thought about is I do think a good amusement park, a good theme park should have a good Woody. A wooden coaster is classic and a lot of the good ones are excellent. But the thing is like Hershey had Lightning Racers, which technically for some people is 2 good Woodies, and Comet, which apparently the new trains kind of stink, but we haven't ridden it ourselves. But that's still otherwise a good classic wooden coaster.
Hope to experience soon.
Why keep your choices are demolish the one that's the least popular or turn it into something new, and that's what they did, and we always applaud that.
I think there would be riots in the streets if they tried to RFC Comet.
I don't even know if it would be possible.
But I will say, like, I think Comet currently, as much as I know people love it, it is a historic credit as well. I think that if they retheme or reimagine that one, they will have the lineup of the century at Hershey Park. I think in many ways, Hershey Park may already be outperforming Cedar Point. Not in terms of raw coaster count. Cedar Point still has more diversity in rides and more, I would say, coasters overall. But Hershey Park is catching up quick.
It's got a lot to offer.
Speaking of Cedar Point, that was a deliberate transition. So we don't have to re-explain what RMCs are, but Steel Vengeance was one of the first. And it remains to this day one of the record-breaking coasters in the RMC stable. This was originally Mean Streak, which opened as a wooden coaster in 1991. Permanent closure for that attraction was announced in 2016. The idea, closing it down, was that they were going to expand their Frontier Town section and change that whole ride into something different. That's how they pitched it. However, RMCs and hybridization was relatively new at the time that this was announced. So nobody knew what they were thinking when they started working on this new coaster. And what came of it is probably a lot of people's #1 coaster in the world. In the world. Like, I don't know, we might be overhyping it. I'm sure other people are because our coaster experiences are very different from someone else's. But Steel Vengeance, if it's anything like Iron Gwazi down in Tampa, which we did not include on this list, but should have.
It just would have been a list of RMCs.
Yeah. Steel Vengeance is a record-breaking hybrid coaster built on the original bones of Mean Streak. And it is an amazing experience. Now, having said that, asterisk, because we haven't experienced it yet. I've watched POV. I can tell you without riding it that it's going to be an amazing experience for us, but we have yet to experience anything at Cedar Point, unfortunately. So those who are watching, I know that is sacrilege. We will make it there. We will. We haven't yet, but we will. In the meantime, let's just sing the praises of RMC. Also at Cedar Point. This was by design, I put this here. So, Top Thrill 2, or TT2 as some refer to it as already. I know, it's weird. Makes me think of Terminator more than anything. So Top Thrill Dragster was the original attraction. It was built off the heels. Actually, I think it was the original, and then King Ka came later. The U-bend of like a hyper launch coaster that just sent you up to a staggering height and then dropped you down in a kind of like pretzel roll.
No, not pretzel roll. It's just a coil. Pretzel implies
corkscrew.
Yeah.
Corkscrew is more what I went.
Yeah. That's more
goes down a corkscrew. Anyway, that's gone now, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, they took away that little twisty?
I don't know if they took away the twisty, but the track's all been replaced. So Top Thrill Dragster is not Top Thrill Dragster anymore.
Well, I know that.
So Top Thrill Dragster opened as a basic like hydraulic push that launched you to the top of a very, very tall tower and then dropped you right back down. If you've not seen anything like that, check out Six Flags Great Adventure in King Ka, because that is still, to this day, the world's tallest roller coaster, and it still stands in that original configuration. Top Thrill 2 had to come about because in August 2021, I think Top Thrill had its problems. I don't think there was a lot of rollbacks happening, which coaster enthusiasts were really hyped about. Like getting a rollback was like winning the lottery. But it would impact your ride experience, right? Because then you'd have to retool, you'd have to push the train back, and you'd have to launch again. It does slow everything down. So Top Thrill 2 had its problems before August 2021, but in August 2021, there was a famous incident where a piece of Top Thrill Dragster came off and apparently struck a woman in the head. I've not done a deep dive to see if she was okay, but I would assume not, because if you're launching at the speed necessary to get you to the top of that hill, that creates a danger of any loose articles, let alone pieces of the actual coaster, flying off the attraction. So, after investigation by the Ohio Department of Agriculture, the ride was closed and reconfigured, redesigned as Top Thrill 2. With this redesign, a significant investment was made. A spike was added. It's basically now a Big Daddy Pantheon. It launches you forwards,
a section of Pantheon.
Rolls you back on purpose, so every time is a guaranteed rollback now. Launches you a second time backwards up a spike to gain the additional momentum, and then sends you forward again. If you think about this in terms of like how the ride operates, that means that the technological operations are more sophisticated in some ways, less sophisticated in others, and it makes for a smoother ride experience. It also improves operations as a whole, and it makes the ride a little bit safer because you don't really build up enough speed to go over that hump until the point where you're well past the crowds. So you don't have as high a chance of hitting someone in the head with a loose article. Having said that, never take a cell phone or a loose article on a roller coaster of this type. Or any roller coaster ideally, but definitely not one of this type.
Don't do it.
So, only thing about this one is that when it reopened in May 2024, it was open for like 2 days. And it has since been closed. After those 2 days, they experienced another unrelated maintenance issue. The ride is still closed at this time. It is expected to reopen sometime before the summer's end, but it might not. Famously, Top Thrill Dragster, the original, stood SB&O for several seasons, constantly being bait and switched. Like, we're going to open it in a month. No, 2 months. All right, next year. Next year for sure. All right, maybe next year. So we'll hope that Top Thrill 2 doesn't suffer from that same curse, because a lot of people I know didn't get a chance to ride it. Some of our friends traveled all the way out there specifically to ride it, only to find out that it was closed indefinitely. So hopefully that is something that can be resolved quickly without too many issues. But
quickly and safely.
I do think, as reimaginings go, this was a great way to go about it, whether it's operational or not.
The thing about these rides is, meaning the kind of style rides where you just launch over a top hat and then the ride's done, is they are over very quickly, and this just kind of adds some length to the ride. There's more elements. There's a forwards launch, backwards launch, the spike. For the few that did get to ride it, we heard good things.
Yeah.
So,
and because of the reverse section, you can load a second train. They do have more than one train, but you can only have one train on the track at any given time, because if you run them back and forth against each other, obviously they're going to smash. So it's not like it's a capacity machine, but operations move much faster, or did for the brief window that it was open. Operations move much faster.
Theoretically, they move faster.
I think it is. I think we've seen proof of concept at this point. Like, I think it was a good change, but we'll have to see when and how it reopens, whether or not that holds.
Hopefully they figure it out soon.
Again, not written, but will at some point.
Switching gears.
Switching gears a little
That
bit.
was a transition.
Well, we wanted to talk about how it's not just coasters.
Rides.
It was not even just, it's not
We've talked about dark rides, but
We've talked about dark rides. It's not just coasters and dark rides. It's also like a show can be reimagined. So we won't spend a ton of time on this. There's 101 Disney shows that have been reworked and reimagined. We're going to discuss 2 of them.
They just announced that Little Mermaid show is getting reimagined too.
True. And that's not on our list either.
No.
This was the standout example of recent memory. So the Finding Nemo, the musical attraction at Disney's Animal Kingdom, that was the title of it. It was a pretty straightforward show, 40 minutes long, which in my opinion, way too long for a kids program. So Finding Nemo, the musical, closed in 2020 with all live entertainment during the pandemic. And when it reopened in 2022, it had been reimagined from scratch. There were bones that are still there from the original show. The puppets are the same, plus some extras. The overall narrative is the same, plus an additional framing device that was new. But a lot of the technology has evolved. It's apparently a much more immersive show and a better paced show now. And as opposed to most shows that we've heard or seen or have looked into the history of, this one went from a 40-minute show to a 25-minute show instead of the other way around.
How long is festivals like?
I don't know. It's only 25, 30 minutes.
It doesn't feel that long.
It can't be too much longer.
It can't. I guess it wasn't.
If it even is. But this attraction has definitely been modded. And on the list, in addition to the shortening of the attraction and the addition of some extra puppets, new narrative framing device. There's the fish tank at the beginning that all the fish tank residents, what do we call them? The fish tankies? The fish tank fishes are telling the story of what happened during the Finding Nemo movie, which I think sets it up better for a look back instead of it being a retelling from the beginning with no context. New set pieces including a 32-foot-long sunken submarine and a 15-foot-tall fish tank volcano. Innovative new lighting, sound, and special effects to create an underwater environment. And projection mapping. I think, honestly, like the more I read about this show, I've never given this show much of a chance.
Yeah,
I really haven't from the beginning. But I kind of feel like it might be worth checking out.
It on our next Animal Kingdom day. It'd be, 25 minutes escape from the heat.
That's the thing. When it was 40 minutes, I was like, that's a lot of time to not be riding Flight of Passage or Dinosaur. But now I feel like maybe it's not so much of a commitment. Anyway. It's not just rides that can be reimagined. Shows benefit from reimagining as well. This is the other show that's on our list. And to be clear, this is the Disney World version of Fantasmic. I am well aware that there are, at this point, dozens of iterations of Fantasmic over several different parks all over the world. It was a very popular show. The original was opened in Disneyland. And it was so popular from the get-go that it pretty quickly came to Hollywood Studios at Disney World, which back then was MGM. Or not MGM. Was it MGM? MGM.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel right coming out of my mouth. MGM back then did have its Fantasmic Arena. And then it came to Tokyo. When the Tokyo Disney parks were open, it almost immediately got a Fantasmic. So the most recent changes to Fantasmic have been at Disneyland, but at Disney World, we have some relatively recent changes that I think we've had more time to digest. So that's what we chose to focus on. The original attraction, if you will, opened in Disney World 1998, riding on the success of Disneyland's show. Show was closed in 2020 due to the pandemic, but by that time, they had already made some subtle tweaks that not many people even noticed. When the show reopened after live entertainment started coming back, same year as Finding Nemo Part 2, 2022 announced a set of changes to Fantasmic, which encompassed a lot of different things that we've talked about. Cultural relevancy. They got rid of Pocahontas. Some people were a little bit put off by the Pocahontas scene because of the way that Native American culture has developed since.
Or our
sorry, yes, our interpretation,
our respect for
our reverence for Native American
culture, I would say.
Yeah, that's good. Probably a better way of putting it. Technology has advanced. We're not so reliant on gas for fire anymore, which, sorry for Disneyland's incident, which came later, but Disney World started moving away from that a little bit earlier. We also introduced some, just to go back to cultural relevancy in a little bit more positive way, we also introduced some new characters and some new IPs to the show, which fit very naturally. Moana is pictured here. That was a big hit, which is relatively recent. Doesn't feel like it was recent, but it was relatively recent. Frozen and Frozen 2, pieces of that have been woven into the show now. A couple of scenes were tweaked and modified to play down certain elements, play up certain elements. Mostly, this was a big technological advancement. They wanted to blow your mind, and I think they did it. Now, we have never seen Walt Disney World's version of Fantasmic. So when we do, this will most likely be the version we're seeing. But we have seen Disneyland's version, and I will say, if Disney World has taken what they've done there and built it in a bigger environment, I'm going to love it.
Yeah,
I'm going to love it. Way. It's going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, jumping to outside the United States again. I wanted to spend a lot more time than we have to talk about this on this, because this is an attraction that has seen some times.
Apparently it has a
history. This is Crazy Bats. The current iteration is called Crazy Bats. It's a roller coaster. It's an augmented reality or a virtual reality ride in not Europa Park, Phantasialand in Cologne, Germany. So Crazy Bats is actually the third iteration of this attraction. And it's the third full-on reimagining of this attraction if we take it back all the way to its roots. The original attraction was a lights-off, many different strobe, electrical, pulsing light effects ride that was emulating the success of Space Mountain at Disney. That coaster was built indoors. It was called Space Center, and it opened in 1988. It was fine, to my knowledge, based on what I can dig up. It didn't seem to have any issues, but it fell out of relevancy and out of sync with the rest of the park's theming when they opened a new themed area next door. So they rethemed it to something called Temple of the Nighthawk, which eventually came to be my favorite piece of theme park music of all time. I listen to it constantly, still to this day. But Temple of the Nighthawk, relatively disappointing successor for a couple of reasons. It matched the theming of the overall area better since adding that new themed area, but it had a real hard time adjusting to the transition. The ride itself had a lot of technical and maintenance issues. The cosmetic appeal of the ride went down considerably. They tried to paint the inside, the halls, the exterior green, and it didn't quite work, or the paint faded or crumbled or didn't look the way they wanted to.
Somehow.
Degraded a lot. So then they tried covering it all up with camouflage netting while sticking to that kind of like jungle theme they built up. And then there was a freak fire across the park from this location, which unfortunately brought down the European equivalent of the fire marshal on their heads, and they had to adhere to much stricter fire safety rules. So the nets had to come down. Looking ahead to the next 5 years after that, lights on the train were installed in 2008, failed in 2008, were never repaired. 2011 brought strobe lights to the lift hill, which immediately failed 2 months after installation. In 2012, strobe lights that had been installed in 2011 on the brake run also failed and were never repaired. And then from 2014 to 2019, Temple of the Nighthawk really just became a roller coaster in the dark. They tried to enhance this experience by making it more of a musical ride, initially using Katie's favorite ever song, The Egg Travels from Dinosaur.
You know.
I don't know how theme parks keep getting away. Like it's all theme parks. They all use that song. It's not Disney. It's just whoever wants to use it. I don't know. Someone should do a deep dive. But then in 2019, they had their own, actually 2014, I'm sorry. 2014, they brought in their own original score, which was one of my favorite pieces of theme park music of all time. You can still look it up on YouTube. It's out there. It's pretty good. And I can imagine doing a ride in the dark with no idea what's happening and still having fun because it's like, yeah, the music is awesome.
The music's taking me.
In 2019, the ride was suffering from a lot of different technical failures from years prior. It really wasn't drawing crowds anymore. It really paled in comparison to what had opened next door in that new themed area. We have now 2 roller coaster credits right next door that were far more popular at far lower operating cost. So what they decided to do, instead of scrapping this ride entirely, is to give it a 3rd iteration, and that was Crazy Bats. The reason you see that wacky image in front of you is because Crazy Bats is actually a VR ride. It's the same attraction as Temple of the Nighthawk. They have changed literally nothing about the interior of the ride, save for the fact that I believe they did a little bit of upkeep on the trains and the tracks. But Crazy Bats, the entire experience is in a headset now. So I've heard that it's actually quite good as VR attractions go. And a lot of us, myself included, do not love VR attractions. We'd rather just experience with our eyes.
After hearing about the tumultuous history of the ride, everything they tried to do broke, I can understand why they were like, well, let's just stop trying to make anything cool on the track and just give people a headset to experience the ride.
It's something to keep the ride alive and, get some kind of return on our investment. It was necessary. It was a necessary change. And I do feel for them on this. I still
remember, so Tim had been obsessed with the soundtrack for a few years. And, this is probably 2020, 2021 or something. We're watching vlogs about people going to Fantasyland and stuff like that, and Tim's like, oh, no one ever talks about Temple of the Nighthawk before. So he's finally looking it up, and I was on the other side of our apartment, and I just hear this scream of despair, and I was like, what? He's like, Temple of the Nighthawk is gone. They closed the ride 3 years ago.
I wanted to ride in the dark with the music.
He wanted the music.
For the record, Space Mountain is, especially the Walt Disney World version, it's rougher than it used to be, and the lights have faded considerably. It's probably akin to what Temple of the Nighthawk would be if we were to ride that same attraction today. So I honestly, I feel like I would have jived with the actual Temple of the Nighthawk experience that we had left. It would have been rough, but I would have been okay.
You would have been okay with the music.
Because the music was good. Theme park music is such a big thing for me. Mm-hmm. But Crazy Bats looks like it'll be fun. We do intend to go to Fantasyland at some point in the near future, so hopefully we'll get a chance to experience this, and then we can relay back to you what we thought of it. But I will say, for all its troubled history and all its flaws and all its
still around, technically.
It's still there. It's a reimagined attraction. Different Nemo. Nemo 2.
So this is the Finding Nemo submarine voyage in Disneyland. That originally was the submarine voyage. It opened in 1959.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
It was not 20,000.
It was not?
It was not.
What?
I told you that in the notes that you told me to look up. I will explain.
Okay, you explain.
I will explain.
You explain to us.
So this is it was the submarine voyage. It just was a underwater
generic underwater adventure.
Submarine attraction with originally they were going, it was trying, if you guys remember the story about how Walt Disney apparently wanted real animals for Jungle Cruise. The original thought was to make it like an actual aquarium with real animals, and when that was quickly discovered not going to be feasible, that's where the fake animals and animatronics and things end up, and it was the submarine voyage. After that ride was successful and the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was successful, they built the 20,000 Leagues ride in Walt Disney World.
Oh.
They had the 20,000 Leagues ride, which now does not exist, because instead of reimagining it, they paved Paradise and built up the Little Mermaid and New Fantasyland. So now this ride was operational from 1959 till 1998, I believe. And then it sat. It's like drained and, well, actually it wasn't drained for a while, but it sat for a while Sad thing for hardcore Disney fans, there was a thought it might be rethemed in around 2003 to Atlantis, The Lost Empire, underrated 2D animated Disney movie.
Disney may or may not have sabotaged that movie.
But after that ride was not after that movie was not a commercial success, which it's Disney's fault it wasn't, and I will die on that hill. After that ride wasn't a commercial success, it then was drained and it sat empty for a while. Now, after the success of Finding Nemo, the ride did get revamped and reopened as Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage in 2007. So almost 10 years of nothing to get revamped. It's definitely I would say a good spiritual successor to Submarine Voyage. The boats are, I think the same. I don't know if they're the same boats, but their design, the design didn't change. Recently, this ride actually underwent a long refurbishment, and we got to ride it shortly after that refurbishment, and the water was just gorgeous, and it looked so bright and vibrant. So I hope it sticks around. It's very unique. It's a very unique attraction, and it is kind of cool that the concept of the ride has been around for like almost 70 years, approaching 70 years. So
not a lot of attractions like this in the United States. Overseas, there are some examples of underwater attractions that are a little bit closer to this pattern, but
this is the ride that famously they used to have. I think it was in the 60s or 70s. They had cast members dress as mermaids and swim around. And then they stopped doing that when the cast members were like, I think we're breathing in toxic fumes, or we're being not breathing in, but we're being exposed to toxic fumes from the submarines, and they couldn't do that anymore.
And that's why we have unions at Disneyland. All right, this is one of the weaker reimaginings, I would say, on this list. But
me too.
I honestly think that it's better reimagined than you remember, because
you didn't even ride this.
I looked at it. Look, we have a vlog from 2022. Would you like to go back and look at it? Because I have plenty of footage of it.
No.
Look, this is Nitro Racers.
Supercharged.
Now its subtitle is Supercharged. This is at not Busch Gardens, Water Country, USA. And we wanted to touch on this not because it is the best example of something that has been reimagined, but because it's an example of an attraction outside a theme park and in a water park that has been reimagined. Other examples do include, though, Aquazoid Amped at the same park was reimagined as something that went from something that was kind of basic, just a standard raft through a giant tube, into something that was a pretty sensory experience. And I mean as a pretty sensory experience, not pretty sensory.
Yeah.
This is an outdoor attraction, Nitro Racers Supercharged. It used to be just regular Nitro Racers. What they've added by reimagining it, for the park's 40th anniversary, by the way, we do have a vlog out. It's one of our most recent videos. And if you've made it this far, you must either really like us or really like to hate us. So please go check that video out. So Nitro Racers Supercharged is basically a reinvigorated version of the exact same attraction. The slides did not change, but they got repainted and buffed. The actual attraction itself went from being basic slides, which you will remember in 2022, we did not have quick queue. You did this twice. Like, it was not a long line. It was not a big draw. Now, arguably, it's a little bit of a bigger draw. And this was done to celebrate the park's 40th anniversary, but it could have been done any time and had the same effect. It's added a sound loop, responsive sounds that are, I believe, weight sensitive. So when you're coming through the finish line, this is a racing
attraction.
It announces the winner. It times you, which is new and cool. Mm-hmm. Everyone who finishes gets like a time that reads on the monitor. And then you can go, and they've added like a podium where you can stand, the top 3 people can stand next to their times on the clock and take a picture, which is really cool. It's not a lot. It really isn't. It wasn't a lot for an attraction as its own original thing, and it's not a lot that they've done to retheme or reimagine it since, but a little bit goes a long way. For something like this, there is something to be said for having something like this go from nothing to something. Like a little bit does something. Do we have a comment?
We do. Keeping Up in
Disney.
When you watch the recap later,
don't worry.
You'll see what happened.
Don't worry. You didn't miss anything.
We've just been ranting.
We've been riffing.
Yep. But thanks
Good
for
to
joining.
See you guys. Thanks for coming. This has been a very quiet live stream for a number of reasons, and we're totally cool with that.
Yep.
But for those who are rewatching it after the fact, just know we haven't been ignoring the comments. They're just not there. Yep. All right, jumping across the seas again. So, and I will say, in defense of Nitro Racer Supercharged, a lot less happened on this attraction than I was led to believe.
I mean, you wanted to include it.
De Vliegende Hollander
discussion
in Efteling. You know why? Because it's a great ride.
We just want to talk about this ride more.
So, it's tough because there's no real great imagery beyond promotional photos for what actually changed about this attraction. But we've talked about it many times before. The theme song is a banger. You gotta just look up the Vliegende Hollander OST from Efteling and just like
sway to it.
It's good.
With the flagon.
But for those who don't know, the Vliegende Hollander is a water coaster attraction in Efteling in the Netherlands. It is a great attraction that combines dark ride with roller coaster, like straight up roller coaster, with then water coaster at the very, very end. It was originally designed to do all of those things, but the dark ride scene was supposed to be a little bit more intense. I would argue it's still quite intense. It is scary. There's a split second every time we ride that attraction where we feel like we're going to die. But apart from that,
I don't.
That's part of what makes it fun.
Yes.
It's a really, really cool ride, and what they did to reimagine it is it's minimal. It really is. It's similar to what they did for Nitro Racer Supercharged. But what they've done is they've taken, for the 2023 season last year, they took a dark ride scene, which was a little bit of a technical debacle, and they made it into something that is truly amazing and kind of terrifying. They used to have, in this attraction, the narrative goes, you go out to sea, you hit the open water, you hit a storm, you die. Then you descend to hell, where the sirens and the underworld claim your soul, and that becomes the roller coaster. It becomes very intense from that point until you escape the underworld out into the open and then crash down on open water outside. If you do it during the daylight, it actually forms a pretty great narrative that kind of pieces itself together, and you really do feel like you're experiencing some of that. But what they changed, the narrative is the same. The dark ride scene used to be a giant water curtain with projections where you would see that the storm was in front of you. You would think you were about to get soaked, and then the water curtain would cut and you would enter the underworld. Problem was, sometimes the water curtain didn't cut. There were a lot of people looking back at the history of the ride, the attraction, and even like seeing some of the comments on our videos from the park. There were a lot of people who said it didn't cut in time. There was a recurrent problem where the first two rows would catch the full weight of the water curtain, and it would be heavy, and it would be soaking.
Soaker.
It would be absolutely. If you've been on Infinity Falls at SeaWorld, this is like all of that at once. That was supposedly what it was. It was a lot of water. So when they couldn't get that system down the way they wanted to, Efteling never does anything halfway. If they see a problem, they fix it. In 2020, I think 2022, the tail end of the 2022 season, when it went down in the wintertime for scheduled maintenance, rides like this aren't as popular when it's, like below freezing outside. So it went down for its scheduled maintenance, and they announced that they were going to be reimagining that one scene. And what they came up with was truly immaculate. Like, it is awesome. It's a bunch of shipwrecks in like well lit, like they all get lit up as you come close to them, and your boat is kind of like steering, like it almost runs into each one of the ships, and it kind of like just avoids them at the last second. And there's a splash of water as the sirens emerge, and the sirens are basically just statues that are part of the ships. But they're really cool.
Figureheads of the ships.
the lighting, there's an explosion of water, and the way that the ride interacts dynamically with this new scene, like, it makes such a difference, man. And I never experienced the original attraction. We went to Efteling for the first time in 2023.
If you got hit by that water curtain,
I would
you would
die.
never go on this ride again.
I would never go on this ride again. You're absolutely right. Yeah, so I think that this was a huge change for the ride experience. And I will tell you, y'all know I don't love water attractions. If I get wet, there's a good chance I don't enjoy myself. But this attraction, I would do 100 more times.
Oh, yeah.
And you do get wet sometimes.
Yep.
But you don't get soaked. And it's so good. It's so cool as an experience that I'm willing to get soaked for it. Another park in Europe, though.
Is this the pirate
one? This is Pirates, yeah.
Okay. Wow, it's so
I have to make sure that I say it right, because I keep wanting to say Baratier from One Piece, and that's not right. Pirates in Batavia. So Pirates in Batavia was and is an attraction in Europa Park in Reuss, Germany. Very popular park. Most theme park enthusiasts have heard about it, I'm sure. Pirates in Batavia originally opened in 1987 as a standard dark ride emulating or drawing inspiration from Pirates of the Caribbean. However, a massive fire famously destroyed that ride in much further back than I thought. 2018.
Oh, 2018.
It was much further back than I thought. Although when we heard about it, it was probably closer to 2020. Yeah. So in 2018, this whole attraction was irreparably damaged, burned to the ground. And in that sense, you could make the argument that it's not a true reimagining, because the bones are most definitely not still there. There might be a couple of pieces of track that came from the original attraction, but we're talking this thing was decimated. However, so faithful and dedicated was the Mack Rides team and Europa Park in general to keeping this experience, which was so beloved. They rebuilt the entire thing from scratch. And most of the layout is identical. There's a couple minor changes, but they really went out of their way to make sure that this experience was exactly as you remembered, but better. The technology has improved. The boats use that new Mack Rides technology, that dynamic interactions. Boats. Yeah, they twist and they turn and they swoop around so you can see different story scenes. Like, it's a really, really cool ride.
Love to do it.
I think this is probably like one of our top bucket list dark rides. It is more or less the Pirates of the Caribbean experience, save for the fact that it does not have a crippling drop into darkness. It does have a drop, but not into darkness. It's going to be fun. I'm really excited to see that.
Such a little Weenie Hut Junior you are.
You're a Weenie Hut Junior. I don't feel like I have the strength in this marriage I'm supposed to have.
I will hold your hand as you scream like a child.
All right. Anyone who clicked on this live because of the thumbnail has been anxiously waiting for me to get to this. This is, I think, one of the best ever reimagined attractions. Out of everything we've talked about today, and there have been a lot of really great reimagined attractions, I'm not saying this is better than all of them. This is one of the best in the entire industry. So Alton Towers in the UK had an attraction called Nemesis, a B&M roller coaster suspended in very low to the ground due to local ordinances. Everything at Alton Towers has to be below the tree line. So what they did, they dug trenches so that the ride could run through tunnels and flip over and get higher and dip lower and do like some dynamic movement without going above the tree line and still be a very thrilling experience. Because they had to dig to make that happen, they had the genius idea of theming the attraction around a secret military base with a secret weapon somewhere inside. An alien encounter, if you will, which fit very well into Alton Towers, which has kind of darker horror sci-fi theming regardless. So as the ride kind of hit its limit, what had to happen, and by the way, Theme Park Worldwide goes to this park all the time. Sean and Charlotte have a lot of videos explaining why this retheme was necessary, or reimagining rather, was necessary, and what kind of work went into it. So I'm not going to be the expert on this. I've never been to this park, but I am fascinated by what they did. When it came time, they knew they had to replace the track because it was getting rough. It was not the experience they had originally set it out to be. The original ride opened in 1994, so we're talking like 30 years, give or take, of operation constant with however many trains, never replacing the trains or the track. It was starting to get rough. So when it came time to rework this attraction, they said, we're going to have to close it and we're going to have to replace every piece of track. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to kill this very popular attraction for an extended period of time, let's make it better. And that is exactly what they did. This that you're looking at is Nemesis Reborn, a reimagining featuring new track, I believe new trains, although don't quote me on that. Definitely new theming elements. They have a full-scale monster known as Nemesis that just sits there smoking with a interactive eye and twitching claws that the ride literally swoops past, up, and over while other people are standing there in front of it taking pictures. It is one of the coolest and most photogenic attractions, I think, in the world. And it wasn't like this at the beginning. When Nemesis opened, I've heard nothing but good things about the original Nemesis, so I'm sure it was a good attraction. Now, I think it's awesome. Like, all I want to do at Alton, all I want to do is get to Alton Towers. Once I'm there, all I'm going to want to do is Nemesis. And once that's done, there's a lot of other really cool attractions at Alton Towers that look great.
I was going to say,
including one more on this list. But yeah, it looks incredible.
Super dope. Yep.
And I did have some fast facts on the replacements too. 89 of the 117 support columns were also replaced. The entire track was replaced with newer, more modern track from the same manufacturer, B&M. Reopened on 6th of November 2020, closed on the 6th of November 2022, reopened on the 16th of March 2024, unveiling the entire attraction. And they did such a great job with theming in this area as well, because they had like fake protesters out front saying "Free Nemesis." They really went above and beyond. I'm like, I can't say anything but great things about this. And I've not even ridden it yet.
I can't help but draw a little bit of comparison to like Loch Ness Monster. Like they added the monster.
Sure, but this is better.
This is better. Nessie needs like her tongue to flick or something.
It does. I think this is our last one.
Is it?
This is our last
Okay.
one. I believe this is our last one.
Not too shabby.
We're doing all right.
A little over an hour and a half.
Honestly, if we hadn't had that technical flub at the beginning, we'd probably be
honestly, because we've just been talking and not we would have gone on a lot longer if we had.
We actually thought this was going to be like a 2.5 hour live stream. So
yeah.
Anyone who stuck it out, or anyone who's watching the replay, or Jamie and Ari, thank you guys for being on. Like, oh, my heart goes out to you. I hope we haven't talked too much. All right. Our final entry into the reimagined category is The Curse at Alton Manor. Now, I will be clear and say I don't know. We've obviously never been to Alton Towers. I don't know a heck of a lot about what this used to be, but I've done my homework to find out, because The Curse at Alton Manor, as its most recent iteration, which opened in 2023, so cool. Like, this is a park that is themed to spooky things, spooky, mysterious, sci-fi. All those things fall into a bucket at Alton Towers, and that makes it like my must-do park. Probably after Dark Universe in Epic Universe, opening later next year. So Alton Towers used to have an attraction, originally opened in 1992 as simply the Haunted House. It was a walk-through attraction originally. It became a ride-through attraction as it evolved. In 2003, it received a reworking as Duel: The Haunted House Strikes Back, which was eventually shortened just to Duel. And that was a ride-through attraction that had interactive laser shooting.
Yay.
Which, mixed results, right? It was also rethemed.
I just don't want to work. Can I just sit and watch things?
It took the haunt out of the haunted house, in my opinion, because it was overlaid with zombies. It wasn't a straight up haunted house. So like the naming convention of the Haunted House Strikes Back, no wonder it fell away, because it didn't really make sense.
Yeah.
Later, as I think we've had kind of like a renaissance of theme parks in the last decade, like genuinely with the pandemic and giving people time to think about what could be better at the parks. Like there's been a boom recently. 2023, The Curse at Alton Manor was reopened after the closure in 2022 of the Duel. It is straight up dark ride now, and it is supposedly terrifying. Features all kinds of magnificent effects, Pepper's Ghost, laser, jump scares. Like it's basically my ideal dark ride. Like it is a dark ride. It is truly an attraction that from the poster art alone captivates me. And I want to do
this promotional
nothing but
image
this.
is pretty dope.
And we've heard really great things about the attraction from people like Emily at Tats and Coasters, but since Alton Towers does not allow for on-ride POVs, we've really not seen anything. I honestly feel like video wouldn't do it justice anyway.
Probably not.
So what I've heard is compelling enough that I want to experience that. I think it's one of the best reimaginings, and it does, similar to what Test Track is doing, it does take it back to its roots. Like it makes it less of an interactive ride, yes, but more of a captivating ride, something that fully immerses you and ideally terrifies you. So these have been our reimagined attractions. I know that we didn't cover everything, and we've talked a lot about other attractions. Some others that we didn't talk about. I've been arguing with Katie that Sky Rush at Hershey Park has been lightly reimagined in the same way that Nitro Racers has been. Nitro Racers, right? Yeah, supercharged. Sky Rush has been supercharged.
And I argued that Nitro Racers wasn't worth mentioning in this stream.
Sky Rush got a new station, a new theme, a new logo, and new trains. I would say it's been reimagined. But other examples, Jolly Rancher Remix at the same park, which is, I think you'll agree, a true reimagining from scratch.
That was a reimagining.
Also, Tarzan's Treehouse, you mentioned, at Disney World, Disneyland, because it's Swiss Family Robinson at Disney World. Tarzan's Treehouse became, Swiss Family became
Tarzan's Treehouse, which became Adventureland Treehouse,
which is themed to the Swiss Family. So it kind of went back to its roots too. A lot of reimaginings.
Sorry.
A lot of reimaginings go unnoticed by the general population, and it's mostly a treat for diehard fans or people who have honestly just lost enthusiasm for one attraction or one area of a theme park or another. And it's a really fun way. It's a really cool way to not only interact with the fans, but also draw in nostalgia if you pay reverence or homage to the original attractions, and also to revitalize the park. Like an area of the park that has low crowd flow, put something brand new in it. It doesn't have to be brand new. It can be an original attraction that has been given new life by a reimagining. And I think although Disney has coined the term reimagining, it was part of the Imagineering.
I mean, that
effort.
is literally what social media people were the word they were using for Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah,
a reimagined attraction.
Exactly. And so Disney may have created it.
If you say reimagineered, then you're getting into Disney territory.
Disney, I think, gave birth to the phrase reimagining, and ever since it has been used throughout the industry.
I am not going to go on the record.
Why are you fighting me on this? This is such a stupid thing to fight on.
I'm saying Disney's Imagineering is their coin phrase.
I'm not arguing that.
I don't think that anyone's stealing from Disney by saying reimagining.
I'm not saying they're stealing from it. I'm saying Disney invented the term and made it popular. And since then, it has become a term that is used widely in the industry. If you rebut me one more time,
just saying,
there's gonna be words.
I don't want to go.
There's gonna be words.
Strongly lettered words.
Strongly lettered words. Oh, okay. We've had a fun time tonight, guys. This has been a journey on this one. All right, before we close it out, we did have to cancel a live stream 2 weeks ago because we were totally unprepared and kind of fell off the train a little bit. So this is going to be our only live stream in June, which means we did want to highlight some of our LGBTQ plus creators that we follow and we've really gotten to know over the years. At least two of them. One of them we'd like to know.
Yes.
Healthy Diz of Disney is Erica. She used to work for the Diz, so if you're familiar with her from that news outlet, you might carry over to some of her. But I really think she's got content that stands on its own. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely check her out. TikTok and Instagram. Instagram is how we found her, but she does have a YouTube channel where she posts near weekly vlogs. And they're a captivating slice of life type vlogs that happen to be in the Central Florida area. So.
Definitely loves Disney, but shares all aspects of living in Central Florida, and we've discovered things to do, places to eat.
We've learned a lot
actually
outside of the bubble,
from
Erica's channel. So we love watching her and her family and her wife, and they're great people all the way around. So you should definitely check her out. I haven't seen what's on the Twitter/X platform for her, but I know she has one. So if you're an X person, I'm not sure how many of you are left, but there they are. Magical by Sarah, friend of ours that we've been following for quite some time. She's actually in Orlando currently.
Yeah.
I don't know if she'll be pumping out vlogs because I know that her YouTube channel has been slowing down recently because she's just gotten a new job and it's been tough to keep up with. But her Instagram and her TikTok are thriving. So definitely check her out. She and her partner Lauren travel all over the world, not just to Disney. They do a lot of Disney, a lot of Disneyland Paris. Disney. But they also do places like Vegas and France and what?
Sorry, you're just laughing at like Vegas, which is a city, and France.
I expanded Disneyland Paris to France. Lobster and Skittles. Anyway, great people. Definitely check her out. Again, YouTube. She definitely has a following on YouTube, and we're a part of it. But Instagram and TikTok are very active right now, so I would check her out there as well. And then JJ Extra, a lovely couple in the UK that we just found. Sarah's also in the UK. I should have said that from the beginning. JJ Extra is a lovely couple from the UK that we just started following. They have a great YouTube channel that has a lot of informative videos, believe it or not, and a lot of travel videos. So if you're interested in not just theme parks, but also travel, experiences, which at the heart of our channel, we love those things too. And we do a lot of that outside of theme parks and haunts. So we really clicked with their stuff, and we really recommend that everyone else check them out too. They're on Instagram, YouTube, and Instagram again, because apparently I can't type to save my life.
Definitely check them out on Instagram.
If you're not checking them out on Instagram, you've been warned twice. But definitely their YouTube stuff is where most of their content goes. I think, like us, they pour their heart and soul into YouTube, and Instagram is kind of an auxiliary outlet. So check them out on both. And I think that's it.
Surprise, there's like 10 more slides.
Surprise! No. Our next live stream, God willing, no technical issues, no rescheduling necessary. Our next live stream is going to be on July 2nd. It's going to be about water parks. A lot of you who know us will be surprised that we're covering that.
I'm surprised we're covering that.
But believe it or not, if you've seen our Water Country vlog from this year, we're starting to expand our horizons. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's happening. So we're going to talk a little bit about water parks on the next one, including some that we've never been to and some that we would like to go to, and some that we have been to and think are great. And I know you guys will have a ton to talk about on that one because Jamie and Ari have been following me in my battle against water for quite some time. So you'll hear me get a little squeamish from time to time.
Squeamish.
I said squeamish. You made it squeamish.
I like squeamish.
Strongly lettered words. All right, y'all. Well, for anyone who stuck it out, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate y'all. For anyone who's watching this after the fact, I am so sorry.
It was chaos.
But we really appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, I'm Tim.
I'm Katie.
And every night
is a new adventure.
And we'll see you again soon. Bye.